Caitlin Clark, phenomenal run.
Yeah.
I saw her the other night, by the way. I saw her the other night in Indy after her, I think it was her second game or third game.
I don't think I've ever met her. I don't think I've met her before, but it seems like everything is going to be great for her because she's a great talent. She seems like a great guy.
Ellie Gazzardo, the head coach. Her team rallied twice in the Southland Conference Tournament for wins, and that one dead on. Right on the mark.
You've probably heard the name CaitlinClark, but do you know why she's being called the Steph Curry of women's basketball? This Iowa superstar isn't just breaking records, she's reshaping the entire game. And it's not just about her insane stats. Clark is doing something that's never been seen before in women's basketball. Now you might be wondering what exactly makes Caitlin Clark's game so special. Well, let's break it down. Have you ever watched Steph Curry drain threes from impossible distances? Or maybe you've seen old clips of Pete Maravich dazzling crowds with his flashy passes. Now imagine combining those skills into one player. That's Caitlin Clark for you. Clark's not just playing basketball, she's redefining it.
Every move that she makes.
Clark will loft it up there and swish it in with a three. Such
Her ability to sink those deep three-pointers, the ones where she's practically standing on the logo, is changing how teams have to defend against her. Can you believe opponents are now forced to guard her the moment she crosses half court? It's like she's playing a different game altogether, but here's where it gets really interesting. Clark's not just a scorer, she's got the vision and passing skills that make her teammates better too. You know how rare it is for a player to lead the nation in both scoring and assists? Well, Clark's done just that. She's the first woman to pull it off, showing she can dominate the game. Now you might be thinking, okay, but lots of players can score and pass. True, but not like this. Clark's reached double-digit assists in 45 games. That's not just good passing, that's next-level playmaking. And when you combine that with her scoring, it's a nightmare for opposing coach. But let's talk about those logo threes for a second. They're not just for show, they're strategic.
Falls in about 7 a game. Look at Clark. Yes! She gets to that logo. She also had a lot of opportunities that did not go her way. Martin will flip back for Clark. She'll launch it. Got it.
When Clark can hit from that far out, it stretches the defense thin. Suddenly, there's more space on the court for her teammates to operate. It's like she's playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. And have you seen her competitive fire? Clark's not just out there to play, she's out there to win. Her passion is contagious, electrifying the crowd and her teammates. It's no wonder she's become must-see TV. Here's the kicker. Clark's style is so unique, so effective, that it's forcing other teams to adapt. Coaches are rethinking their strategies. Players are expanding their skill sets. It's like she's single-handedly pushing the evolution of women's basketball. You've heard about Clark's incredible skills, but did you know she's not just changing the game on the court? She's rewriting the entire record book. Remember when we talked about her hitting 3,000 points, 1,000 assists, 800 rebounds? Well, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Let's talk numbers for a second. Clark didn't just break the NCAA women's all-time scoring record. She shattered it. We're talking 3,951 points. The previous record? 3,527. That's not just beating it, that's leaving it in the dust. But here's where it gets really wild. Clark isn't just dominating one aspect of the game. She's the first Division I player ever to hit those 3,000 points, 1,000 assists, and 800 rebounds in a career. It's like she's playing a different sport altogether. Now, you might be thinking, okay, she's great in the regular season, but what about when it really counts? Well, hold on to your hat, because Clark's NCAA tournament performance is something else entirely. She didn't just show up, she rewrote the history books. 191 points in a single tournament, 32 three-pointers. Those aren't just records, they're video game numbers. But wait, there's more. Remember when triple-doubles were a big deal? Clark's taken it to another level. She dropped a 40-point triple-double in the NCAA tournament. That's never happened before. Not in women's basketball, not in men's basketball, never. Now, you might be wondering, what does all this mean for women's basketball? Well, let me tell you, it's changing everything. Clark isn't just breaking records, she's shattering expectations of what's possible in the women's game. She's forcing people to pay attention, to take women's basketball seriously in a way they never have. And boy, are people paying attention. You know how sometimes you hear about a big game, but then nobody actually watches it? Not with Clark. The national championship game she played in, it drew in a whopping 18.9 million viewers. That's not just a lot for women's basketball. That's the second most watched women's sporting event in US TV history outside of the Olympics. But it's not just that one game. Clark's performances are consistently drawing more eyeballs than many NBA games. Can you believe that? We're talking about a college player outperforming professional men's games in viewership. It's unheard of. And it's not just fans who are taking notice. Big names are sitting up and paying attention. You've got Patrick Mahomes and LeBron James, some of the biggest stars in sports, talking about Clark's impact. When LeBron James is impressed by your game, you know you're doing something right.
You know, she was just talking about the quick turnaround, which I find to be insane.
That I love that she's bringing to her sport more people want to watch. More people want to tune in.
You've seen how CaitlinClark is changing the game, but did you know she's changing lives too? That's right, Clark isn't just breaking records, she's inspiring an entire generation. Remember when you were a kid, looking up to your favorite athletes? Well, for countless young girls across the country, CaitlinClark is that athlete. But here's where it gets really interesting. Clark isn't just inspiring young players, she's drawing in fans from all walks of life. Have you noticed how packed the arenas are when Iowa plays? It's not just diehard basketball fans anymore. Clark's electric style of play is bringing in people who've never watched a women's basketball game before. And now you might be thinking, sure, she's popular, but is she really changing the sport? Well, let me hit you with some numbers that'll blow your mind. Remember that national championship game between Iowa and LSU? It didn't just draw a big crowd, it pulled in an average of nearly 10 million viewers.
They need her to feel confident in her mid-range.
And I think Iowa is okay giving up the mid-range.
Here's Clark driving in for two.
That's not just a lot, it's more than double the previous year's numbers. But it's not just about the big games. Clark's impact is felt every time she steps on the court. You know how sometimes you go to a game and there are empty seats everywhere? Not when Clark's playing. 2023 NCAA Division Y Women's Basketball Championship set a record with 357,542 fans attending, and the championship game sold out with 19,482 fans packing the arena. Now, let's talk about those young fans for a second. You know how kids are always looking for role models? Well, Clark's become that role model for a whole generation of young athletes. She's not just showing them what's possible, she's redefining it. As Clark herself puts it, I was that same kid a few years ago. Can you imagine the impact of seeing someone like Clark dominate the game when you're just starting out? But it's not just kids who are taking notice. You know you're making waves when the biggest names in sports start talking about you. Patrick Mahomes, one of the NFL's biggest stars, called Clark one of the best college basketball players to ever play. And when Patrick Mahomes is impressed by your game, you know you're doing something right. Even LeBron James, arguably the greatest basketball player of all time, has taken notice of Clark's impact.
You know, in sports that's flown commercial or flown, charter, that should be celebrated, and it's because of CaitlinClark. Don't get it twisted.
When LeBron James is praising your contributions to the sport, you know you're changing the game. But here's the real kicker. Clark isn't just changing how people see women's basketball. She's changing how people see women's sports as a whole. Her performances have become must-see events, drawing attention from fans and media alike. It's like she's single-handedly proving that women's basketball deserves the same respect and attention as men's basketball. And you know what? It's working. The increased media attention, the packed arenas, the record-breaking viewership, it's all proof that Clark's impact goes far beyond the court. She's not just playing basketball, she's changing perceptions, breaking down barriers, and paving the way for a whole new era of women's sports. So the next time you see CaitlinClark sink a logo 3 or make a no-look pass, remember, you're not just watching a great player, you're watching someone who's inspiring a generation, changing the game, and redefining what's possible in women's basketball, and trust me, this is just the beginning.